What do horse races, Hampton Court, zebras, and symbols have in common? Once again, another episode of Bridgerton. Cheerio, everyone. Good day to you all. This is D. Newbyman, fellow cinephile, popcorn addict, and emerging film critic, coming to you with reliable recaps, reviews, and reactions. And today, of course, I'm coming to you all with another episode of Bridgerton, Season 2, Episode 2, Off to the Races. This episode was directed by Tricia Brock, who also directed our premiere episode. And our writer for this episode is Daniel Robinson. He's previously been a story editor and writer for the series How to Get Away with Murder. And now, let us commence. So we open up this episode hearing the always delightful words of Lady Whistledown speaking on competition and challenges. The challenge in question would be the rather prickly spinster of a beast, known as Kate Sharma. And it is a challenge that Anthony has found to be quite irritating thus far. And then, in a scene that seems to mirror Anthony and Daphne's dynamic last season, we see multiple suitors lined up while Kate stands watch and facilitates their interactions with her sister. Anthony decides to slide on through and then requests to take Edwina to the royal races that afternoon. And to make a long story short, Kate shuts that all the way down. She says she might be free sometime after December. Oh, assuming that she isn't already on her honeymoon by then. We then see Eloise and Penelope, and it appears that Eloise has taken a renewed interest in Lady Whistledown, now that her writing seems to be slightly elevated above standard gossip fare. We also see Colin finally make his way back from his travels, and of course the entire family is happy to see him, which includes, as we know, Penelope, who is still very much enamored with him. Now, at the very end of the last episode, we saw the much-awaited arrival of the new Lord Featherington, aka Cousin Jack. This is a relief to everyone, except Lady Featherington. She's really not happy to have all her belongings moved out of her bedroom, and she's also not here for his acquired taste in decoration. We then fast forward to the royal races, and we see Edwina, Kate, and Lord Lumley out and about. We also see the arrival of Mr. Thomas Dorset, who is not there to speak with Edwina, but Kate. Their conversation seems to be going pretty well until Anthony and Kate pass a brief glance at each other. Interesting. Then, in a very pleasant surprise, we see Will and his wife Alice. It appears that life is treating him quite well ever since his loss in the fight last season. In fact, he's doing so well that he'll be opening a gentleman's club tomorrow night. Elsewhere, we see Eloise catch up with Penelope, who is quite irritated to have her attempts at conversing with Colin disrupted yet again. Once more, we see that Eloise is on the hunt. She's picked up a pamphlet that describes how to trim a dog's undergrowth, shall we say? It would appear to have been printed on the same paper used for Lady Whistledown's circular. For obvious reasons, Penelope convinces Eloise that this is a mere coincidence. But unbeknownst to Penelope, Eloise has also discovered the name of the printer, aka Chancery Lane Printers. Uh-oh. Anthony manages to weasel his way into the stands next to Edwina, much to Kate's irritation. Their dynamic, of course, is more the same. They are literally arguing over which horse they've bet on and which one will likely win and why. The horses in question, Nectar and High Flyer. After a whole lot of cheering and whistling and hollering and so on and so forth, it is High Flyer that emerges as the victor. Score 1 for Kate. However, Kate's victory is short-lived when Mr. Dorset slips up and says that he knew Anthony back in Oxford, although he had just given the impression of having met him today, which means that his interest in her, despite his objections, was simply to provide a distraction for Anthony to move in on Edwina. Shame, 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 shame. She then demands that Anthony never speak to her or Edwina ever again, and they depart. The ever-determined Eloise makes her way to Chancery Lane Printers, but it doesn't appear to be open. However, she does run into one of the workers there, and their introduction is rocky, to say the least. When she demands that he tell her all about Lady Whistledown, he then chooses to write her off as a simple, flighty girl only interested in gossip and marriage. For obvious reasons, Eloise takes great offense to this, and she makes it clear that the rights of women and other intellectual matters take precedence in her life, something he obviously wouldn't understand. He pauses for a minute, then hands her an appeal in defense of women's rights. I mean, if that's what you're after, then perhaps this is what you should be reading. Oh, and if I happen to see Lady What's-Her-Face, then I'll let her know that her biggest admirer says hello. He then leaves, and if the expression on Eloise's face is any indication, she's slightly annoyed, slightly surprised, and slightly intrigued. At long last, we see that Albion, aka Mr. Finch, and Philippa are officially married. Unfortunately, the new Lord Featherington may have similar aspirations. And the last thing that Lady Featherington needs is for him to install some beef-witted chit into their home and for Lady Featherington and her daughters to be tossed right out of it. I am not going to lie, beef-witted had me screaming. I have never heard of that before, so I looked it up, and it literally means to have the wit of an ox. AKA dumb and or stupid. I was so... But just the word itself, beef-witted. I was so done. We then see Kate, Edwina, and Lady Danbury meeting up at the Queen's Palace, which quite literally looks like it never ends. As it turns out, the actual building is Hampton Court Palace. And to slide in some more Tudor history, this palace was initially built back in 1514 for Cardinal Thomas Wolsey, who was the chief minister of King Henry VIII. But in 1529, as Wolsey fell from favor, the cardinal gave the palace to King Henry to assuage him. King Henry then had it expanded. And so, along with St. James Palace, it is one of only 2 surviving palaces out of the many that the king owned. We then see the queen meet up with the ladies, and she introduces them to her newest discovery of striped horses from Africa called zebras. However, considering that she has given birth to and named 15 children, she's at a loss as what to name them. Jumping right back in with the history, that is 100% factual. Now, one of the most significant of those children is her 5th child, Prince Edward, Duke of Kent and Strathern. His descendants include Queen Victoria and the current Queen Elizabeth II. Eventually, the Queen leaves Kate and Edwina to wander the grounds, which is timely because the always perceptive Lady Danbury has figured out the Queen's grand scheme. By selecting Edwina as the season's diamond, she hopes to eventually unmask Lady Whistledown. But just how this unmasking will play out remains to be seen. Back at Lady Danbury's home, Kate's peace of mind is once again disrupted when she realizes that Anthony has arrived with a gift horse for Edwina. They commence with their usual tete-a-tete, and Anthony makes it clear that despite Kate's perceptions of him, nearly any other woman in London would aspire for the type of marriage that he's offering. To that point, instead of Kate constantly emphasizing what she wants for Edwina, perhaps it's time for Kate to simply let Edwina make that decision herself. Speaking of Edwina, she seems a bit put off by Anthony's gift. She tends to prefer more lap-sized animals. Score 2 for Kate. Now, there might even be a 3rd point for her when Anthony realizes that his family is headed to Lady Danbury's soiree, one that he has not been invited to. But as far as Violet is concerned, it makes sense. Kate wants a love match for her sister, and you seem determined to seek out the opposite. I mean, there's a lesson in this for you somewhere, but only time will tell if you actually learn it. Jumping forward to the soiree, we're basically seeing a talent show involving all of Edwina's suitors. We have magic tricks, cymbal playing, dancing, hoop rolling, poetry, and a whole lot more. After a brief conversation with Edwina, we see Penelope head over to speak with Colin. And for once, their conversation is not interrupted. Now, considering that Colin mentioned earlier that he was not lonely on his travels, Penelope is very curious about the young lady that has captured his attention. He does admit that it involves someone that he had known for a very long time, but after his whole experience with Marina, he realizes he had never known this person at all, namely, himself. Ironically enough, it was Penelope's letters that helped him come to this self-actualization, which includes swearing off women. But no worries for Penelope. After all, she doesn't count. As always, she is Colin's constant, ever-loving friend. After some much-needed encouragement from Benedict, Anthony decides to slide into the soiree at the last minute to read his original poem. But after a few lines and locking eyes with both Kate and then his mother, Anthony decides to come clean. He admits that he's not a man of poetry or words of flattery. He's a man of action. Now, he may not be able to offer the display of passion that she deserves, but when it comes to action and duty, she can absolutely count on him. Edwina is clearly touched by this, and it would appear that the final point goes to Anthony. Once again, Kate attempts to snap Edwina out of the moment, but this time Edwina is not going for it. Then, while Edwina is speaking to Anthony, the two lock eyes once again, and just a little longer than usual. Kate suddenly snaps out of it, and she rushes out of the room, nearly knocking over one of the servants in her rush to get out. Leave it to Lady Danbury to level with Kate, suggesting that Kate focus on her own life instead of running interference for Edwina. Kate says that she is perfectly fine going home alone once Edwina is married, never to set foot in this city again. She also remarks on how Lady Danbury is alone, but very much content. Then Lady Danbury sets her straight. She says, "That is because I have lived, I have loved, I have lost, and I have earned the right to do whatever I please, whenever I please, and however I please to do it. You are not me. And if you continue down this road, you most certainly never will be."
How about that?
As always, Lady Danbury is coming in hot. But as always, she's also coming with the truth. Eloise and her suspicions are once again confirmed when she notices a misshapen K in both the pamphlet and Lady Whistledown's circular. Naturally, Penelope realizes that it's time to purchase a new K. We see her purchasing it in the market after haggling for half price, but things go awry when she bumps into Madame Delacroix in the very same market. We then hear Lady Whistledown in the background saying that two of the worst things that lurk in the dark corners of the city are vermin and secrets, but that even the most well-kept of secrets must eventually come to light. As we hear this, we see Brimsley, the Queen's right-hand man, handing her a tray with all the names and portraits of the women that Edwina has recently spoken to. If their theory is correct, then Lady Whistledown herself will be amongst this very group. The only problem with that? It means that both Eloise and Penelope are officially in the Queen's crosshairs. And that closes out episode 2, Off to the Races. Another solid episode. I don't have too much to say with this one. It was pretty straightforward, but as always, feel free to let me know your thoughts on this episode. How are you feeling about the new Lord Featherington? How do you feel about Edwina and Kate and this whole weird dynamic with Anthony? And how do you see things progressing from this point on? Feel free to let me know down below. So, once again, this is D, Movie Man, signing off, and I'll see you at the movies.